Welcome to the Trigger Warning Talk podcast, where we have uncensored conversations. We exchange information. We provide a ton of resources for all the listeners and the viewers. Of course, this podcast is streaming on all your major platforms. You can also watch it on Spotify or our YouTube channel, which is Penton Pending Consulting Solutions, LLC. We're doing something a little different here with the Trigger Warning Talk podcast. Let me give you some of the disclaimers, and then we'll jump right into what we're doing. And this is just really going to be a very exciting project. If you're triggered at any point during this podcast and you need help immediately, call 911. That's going to get you police, fire, or EMS. If you don't have an immediate medical need or emergent need, but you still need help, we provide a bunch of information in the show notes for every episode that we air. If you need help with trafficking, if you need help with sexually based offenses, domestic violence, if you have a missing person case that you'd like for us to cover, it could be a kidnapping, runaway, or an abduction. Any type of true crime case that you want us to deep dive into, because Mrs. LP is a true crime detective. She is a rape advocate, and she also is a missing person expert. Go ahead and shoot us an email. Please know that there is help available for you. If you are suicidal, have suicidal thoughts, know somebody that's suicidal, or aware of a suicidal situation, call 988. 988 is available 24/7, and it's available toll-free here in the United States. Since we have a worldwide audience, if you need help for any triggering issues and you need immediate help in the UK, you can call 999. In parts of Eurasia, like Switzerland, you can call 112 or 143. We want to thank all of our guests. We want to thank all of our supporters. Like, subscribe, follow. I want to welcome a family of siblings, and we're going to do something a little different on this particular episode of the Trigger Warning Talk podcast, because we know we like doing different stuff. That's why we cover the topics that we cover. We're not ashamed of it. You may hear some adult language, so if you have kids that are in the room or in this space or may come across this podcast, we always say treat this podcast like an R-rated movie. They can watch it, they can listen to it, but have an adult or some caregiver that's there that can answer any questions, comments, concerns, or issues that they may want to address with you. These are adults talking to adults about some very serious and heavy topics, and we don't want them to be feeling like, hey, I don't know what to do with this information. So without further ado, this episode and this series that we're producing is talking about sibling bonds. And we have a family of siblings we're going to be introducing to the world. First and foremost, I want to start with my brother Albert, because I interviewed Albert on the Trigger Warning Talk podcast, where we talk about dads, we talk about domestic violence, we talk about the law. We covered my story, my situation with domestic violence as someone who was a survivor of it, how the law worked with my divorce and some of the things, because Albert's a lawyer. And we talked about a lot of those things as well as his story and his family story. I want to pass the mic over to Albert because he has two lovely siblings in the room, in the building. So if you guys are not watching these podcasts, I keep telling you, go to Spotify, go to our YouTube channel so you can see these lovely human beings. I got graphics on the screen because we're going to do some shameless plugs at the end of this podcast. These family members, they're very articulate. They got works on Amazon. They got stuff on YouTube, but we'll talk about all of that. So I'm going to pass the mic over to Albert. The mic is yours, sir.
Thank you. Good morning, and I'm glad that everyone's here. The intent of these episodes, I'd like to do a series, is to try to have intentional conversations about things that have happened in our past, conversations that we haven't had as an adult. My goal is hopefully we will continue to build on the relationship that we have, but also by recording it, there are other sibling groups that may potentially benefit. So to start off and potentially by example, is I want this episode to be setting boundaries. There are things that we can discuss as long as it doesn't trigger or cause harm with our relationship with one another. And if there are areas that we are uncomfortable discussing right now, I think it's important to set those types of boundaries. I know personally, I have gone, I think both Claire and Ashley, I've gone years before without talking to them, and that's not a healthy thing to do. It's not something that we should be striving for. So trying to be intentional about making sure that we provide safe spaces for one another when we talk about things, but also to try to process some of the trauma that we all experience. It was a shared experience. There's no question set in advance. It's led by all of us. Anyone is able to jump in, say things, set a boundary, set a guardrail, or change the topic of the conversation. But I hope it will help all of us.
I grew up in a household, a single-parent household. It was just my mom and myself. But my dad, my biological dad, he brought 5 children in this world. I'm the second of 5. I didn't grow up around my siblings. I didn't meet them until I was 30. I'm 52 now. And so we met around Christmas, December in the year 2000. I just remember how they embraced me even after not knowing me or seeing me all of those years. Our relationship is still kind of estranged, but I know having siblings is a very important thing. And I always felt like there was such a huge missing part in my life because I knew I had siblings. I just didn't know how many I had. I didn't know exactly where they were, even though we all lived in St. Louis, Missouri. I salute you all for not only having courage and the candor and the passion to come on. And we're going to talk about all kinds of stuff. This show is not a blood and guts podcast, folks. So if you're listening and or watching, the conversations are going to be bluntly honest. And that's all we ask of everybody that's on the show. Conversations that you're going to hear on this podcast, the information that they share, this is their share. This is their truth. This is their facts. This is unscripted. We don't have any pre-drafted questions. This is just the intro episode. So we're just laying the foundation because from here on out, it's going to be lighthearted. There might be some tears. You might hear all kind of things unless we're just joking around. We have our sister IJ, better known as Ashley. We have Claire, Lady Cleasy in the building. You all have such a great dynamic, and I love when I hear you all talk. We got this great group chat going on. I want to know some basic information about you. So we're going to start from my left, which is our sister Ashley or IJ. Ashley, tell us about you because I'm going to pull up your Amazon page. That's why y'all got to watch these podcasts. I want to pull up your Amazon page, Miss Ashley. While I'm doing that, tell us about you.
I used to be a foster parent. I got licensed through the foster care agency that I grew up at. I was a foster youth for 6.5 years. Went to college for interior design and architecture. Once COVID hit, I decided to leave interior design and go into healthcare. And also, I work as a caregiver with disabled veterans. These two books, I've been doing poetry for about 24 years now.
The book that you wrote about poetry, Just Me, inspirational, relatable poetry for women, it's on your Amazon page.
I was inspired to do that because inside my cohort, friends that I know are really struggling with depression, self-hatred. I got one friend that served a couple years in prison. Now 15-year-old, she hasn't been able to see him since he was 2. She's not really allowed, and she struggles with that a lot. So, sometimes we have really hard talk. She blames herself for anything that's gone wrong in her life. And, I've got a lot of friends that are either going through divorce, have been through divorce, and how to start over from that. I got one classmate that she's literally middle of lecture, yelling. I just want something that they can read again and again that might help them be more uplifted during times. Because to me, how you handle that type of stress determines if you literally survive it, if you go off on the deep end, or if you spring back from it. That's why I wanted to put that out there. So everything about that is self-love.
And on the back of your book, it says, this is for every woman who has ever been through any type of struggle. Everyone's experience may be unique, but the pain still may bring unity. Don't live life in despair. This is a book of poetry to inspire you to know your self-worth, strengthen your self-confidence, and be an overcomer of life's greatest challenges. I love that. So that's Just Me, inspirational, relatable poetry for women. This book is available on Amazon. I'll post the link to this book and to your other book, which I want you to talk about real quick. Also, She Walked Alone, Memory of Mom. What's that book about?
So that's about our mom. She had a silent struggle. Anytime she tried to disclose what was going on to either CPS or social workers or anybody, it was kind of cast down because her mental illness. So anytime I had to tell the truth, it was shut down by anything that our dad would say. This is kind of highlighting her skills, talents, anything that I can remember that was positive about her, and then my struggle after she died. But my struggle, whoever suffered any kind of loss, it's like a permanent wound that doesn't really ever heal. My version, but trying to, relate to anybody that's dealt with loss.
Okay. And on the back of this book, She Walked Alone, it says, a poetry book of a simple nature about a mother's love, strength, and her demise. From the perspective of a grieving daughter. In times of pain or sorrow, poetry has been an outlet. Hopefully, you'll find something within these pages that resonates with you. This is She Walked Alone, Memories of Mom by Ashley Nicole Oswego. You can find this book and her other book on Amazon, and we'll post a link to those books in the show notes for this story. Albert has been on the Trigger Warning Talk podcast talking about DV, domestic violence. We talked about the law. We talked about dad and dad's rights. We covered part of my story with domestic violence as someone who's on receiving end, not the perpetrator. Because we know a lot of times there's still these stigmas and taboos and stereotypes that only men are the perpetrators of DV. We're seeing more and more stories and having more and more men come out and talk about that. I've interviewed other gentlemen on the podcast who are survivors and overcomers of domestic violence also. Albert, you are a licensed attorney in the state of Missouri, my home state. You are someone who worked with what most people know as Child Protective Services. As an attorney and as an author, because you have a book, Little One You Are Loved, and I'll share that on the screen. What's your thoughts when we talk about some of these stories from a sibling perspective? Because you're the brother of these two wonderful lotus flowers. They are their own women in their own right. You're the brother in the family, so a lot of times we feel like we got to be the protector. We feel like we have to be the Superman, the superhero. Even though I didn't grow up with my siblings, I have 3 sisters. I grew up in a family where 80% of my family is women, so I always felt like I had to be that guy for all of those ladies in my family. I had to be a protector. So for you, what was your role, or what's your thought about that as being the only brother in this family?
Well, I appreciate that question. It's a bit of a hard question because I don't feel like I ever fulfilled the role that you described that a brother should have. And that's probably been one of the reasons why I've been reluctant to communicate with my sisters over time, because I feel like I failed as a child. And I failed, even as a young adult. It's been hard to look past that and try to build a relationship on top of that. So that's the purpose of this show, is to kind of work on those relationships and kind of walk through some of those difficulties. So like, for instance, just listening to Ashley share about our background, that's not something we really have actually discussed. And so that's what I want, is us to be able to talk to each other and hear things, because although she used different words to describe what had happened in our youth and how she's processed it, she tells it in much the same way. So when she talks about our mother's mental health, I describe it as my father weaponizing her mental health, but we're talking about the same exact thing. Like, every time she tried to speak up, it was used against her. So it's reassuring and comforting to a certain extent to know that my siblings who had this shared experience view it the same way. But that's why I haven't heard those types of things from you, Ashley. And I'm 38 now, right? We haven't had these conversations. And so that's why it's like, the way you see things is the way I see things as well. Like, so if you are struggling with your thoughts of what has happened and transpired as I am, you're not alone. And so I think that's important to have this in the show, because you are doing the same thing that I'm doing, and Claire is as well. She's doing it too. We're all at different stages of doing it, but we're trying to take our past adversity and turn it into something good for someone else. But I think it's important for us to stop and know that we need to work on ourselves as well and heal, etc. So I really commend you on the books that you've written, and I know some of the struggles that you've had, and the fact that you're trying to use that to help others, I think is amazing. And it gives me courage to step forward and out of my comfort zone to create works and share what has helped me and what has worked for me. So that's totally why we're here. And I'm just going to do a shameless plug of the podcast I did with you, LP, so I won't take up time here to talk about my background.
When I think about your book, and I've been plugging away on all these different platforms that I've been on, I'm going to bring it back up on the screen here. I like one of the things that you've done to bring your book to the forefront. You have a YouTube channel called Begin the New Cycle. Please like, subscribe, follow, hit the notification bell to Albert's page, Begin the New Cycle. Tell us about that, and tell us about Little One You Are Loved.
Again, I want to keep it short because I want to make sure we're talking with each other about what we went through. But basically, it's a book that shows a youth that has gone through adversity. It's not their fault that the world is blowing up around them, that they're loved, they are appreciated, and we are proud of them no matter what. It's to give a youth facing adversity language to describe their emotions through the character of Little One. But it's also to let caregivers know that they may when they open up their forever home, find a youth that is severely traumatized and doesn't know how to open up and connect. And so they may reach into their modalities of coping mechanisms and choose impenetrable defenses. And they may start cursing out their caregiver, punching holes in the wall and stuff. I mean, I was one of those types of youth that didn't respond the way they thought, except my lashing out was more in the realm of self-harm. So just it's a way to open up the conversation for that youth, for caregivers, and also serve as a tool for social workers trying to create that conversation and potentially eliciting information that can be used to put them in a safer place.
And we're going to move over to our next sibling, our veteran here, our Lady Leatherneck, U.S. Marine Corps. Salute to your service and your sacrifice. Lady Cleasy, Claire. Claire, what's going on with you?
Well, I'm here. I'm happy to be here with my siblings and my new sibling youth. So, you know, as I'm paying attention to my brother and sister's accomplishments, I'm thinking, man, I'm behind the bar, but with actually getting something out there. But one of my things is just as a mother, as the eldest, I've always been the one to take care of everyone else. It kind of has defaulted onto me. So, and it's in my spirit. So when I encounter anyone who's in any type of need, or that's just what I gravitate towards, and that's what I spend my time doing. So I always put myself on the back burner. But which brings to mind, I have created an organization called Give Every Artist a Chance. I've done a lot through that with creating through art. I'm a musician. I play a saxophone, a little bit of keyboard, make beats, but I've also supported music studios for other people to get their music out there. But it's crazy. I haven't really created a body of work for myself for other people to enjoy and things. I'm a Marine Corps veteran, also a licensed cosmetologist, which takes up a lot of my time as well as being a mother. That's a lot about me. I mean, just honestly, it's the tip of the iceberg, but I am working on a few books.
Your organization called Give Every Artist a Chance.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes.
Which social media are you on?
I'm on Instagram, Facebook, Snapchat, Twitter, everything at Miss Cleasy. And then Give Every Artist a Chance is on Instagram and Facebook.
This is the Trigger Want to Talk podcast. We have uncensored conversations. We exchange information. We provide a ton of resources for all the listeners and viewers. We are on all major platforms. You can also watch these interviews on Spotify or our YouTube channel, Penton Pending Consulting Solutions, LLC. I'm your fireman CEO host, LP. We got Claire in the building. We have Ashley. We have Albert. This is a family of 3 siblings who are talking about sibling bonds, and one of our new shows that we're going to be producing. We're going to be coming to you all with some great conversations and great content because we want to do things different as we address these traumas. Now, we don't just do trauma dumping. We talk about solution-based action plans, at least one every time we're talking about trauma, because we don't want people to just think, oh, this is just gossipy. This is just catty. People just dumping out. We always want the listeners to know, hey, I might resonate with your story.
Because we're going to talk about difficult things, I think it would be nice if we can go around and just kind of establish some boundaries for future conversations.
Sure.
And one of the things I want to at least point out is that for me to feel comfortable talking about what I experienced as a child, please know that if I describe something, I'm describing it as I perceive things as a youth. It doesn't mean that my perceptions are true or accurate or anything along those lines. And so then I all that I ask is that both my sisters know that if I talk about something, it is from how I perceive that information as a child. And until I talk through it and realize it was wrong, or I should have seen it this way or something like that, I can't change that thought pattern. So it's really about, to me, kind of rewiring the brain and stuff to build on our relationship. And I'm going to go there, Ashley. I'm sorry. I have said some bad things toward you in the past that has been offensive because that's not how it was for you at all. But I didn't know that. And until we had the conversations, I was still blind. Or in one of our previous conversations, maybe I was still in my knuckle dragging ways. But I mean, because we grew up together dealing with in this pressure cooker of all this horrible stuff, and then we got spread out, we never processed it. And so here we are a couple decades later, beginning the process of processing it. That is my intention. So I guess I really want to start off more than anything else is I apologize now for anything I'm about to say in future conversations because I don't mean any harm. My intention here is 100% wholesome and I only want the best for us. And I also want to point out too, in response to what Claire had said, is that we all experience things in different ways and in varying degrees. No one experienced anything more or less. It's all just different. And because of that, it has impacted all of us differently as an adult. And so we're in, and I've just learned to accept this term, this calendar year, is that we're all in different points on our healing journey. But I think it's important to realize that it is a journey. It is a process. I'm in a marathon of healing, and I feel like I'm only on mile 3. So with that disclaimer, I would love either one of you guys to just throw out some boundaries and stuff that for future conversations to make sure that we can actually sit here and feel comfortable and talk about things with the goal of being positive moving forward.
Me, I'm ready to go for the gusto because one, it has been so long. So I feel like whatever we want to have a conversation about, it's absolutely necessary. And I'm excited to start this process. It's a long time coming and it can continue on for the rest of our lives, honestly.
Ashley, what do you think about these boundaries, and what say you in terms of what is your goal or your thought process about these conversations that we're going to be having?
Well, I don't have a plan for this to ever be comfortable. For a really comfortable environment. I joke a lot, to deal with these sort of things. Like if somebody meets really sarcastic around people that see me, but it's like a coping mechanism. But I think there may be some points and times where it does get really uncomfortable and it may get heated, but we'll see how things go. I like the boundaries that Albert mentioned. I don't really have anything to add to that. Just to piggyback, it's going to be my perspective. Claire has her perspective, Albert has his, I have my own. We have our own 3 different versions of our truth. The other 2 might not see it the same identical way. Process different. We're different people. I can't say I'm excited to start this. I'm hoping it will be beneficial, hoping that it decrease any tensions, any resentments that we have amongst each other about, how things transpired. We'll see how things go.
I want to wrap up this episode with a quote, and I'll do that at the end of every episode. I want to give you the quote and then have you answer from a sibling perspective in terms of how do you think this could apply to your sibling bond. This is an anonymous quote that I've heard. It says, aspire to inspire before you expire. I'm going to start with Ashley. What does that quote mean to you as a sibling?
To me, I see that as I have to give back while I'm still around. I have to do something positive that's going to outweigh the negative. There shouldn't just be a focus on anything negative.
Albert?
To me, it speaks to pushing through the pain, because these are hard conversations. Like at the top of the episode, you set up what a brother is, and I basically can go through that list and I feel like I haven't checked any of those boxes. But being able to talk about that open and honestly, I think is important to start maybe checking those boxes.
Lady Cleasy, what say you?
To me, as a sibling, I'd like to say to my brother and sister that I am so proud of you guys. You guys have gone far and beyond what most people that I've encountered have ever done in their life, especially considering what we've been through. So, like, as far as Brother Albert, as far as you being that big brother, I mean, we haven't interacted so much, but I know your heart is there and I know you want to help. But of course, there are certain developmental things that need to happen in order for you to be able to help each of us in the ways that we would need help or support or everything. And this right here, this is something that's very beautiful, and I feel like it can help us a lot. And Ashley, you too, like, you are just a go-getter, and you're very persistent and very accomplished. Both of you guys are super accomplished, and me as a big sister, I'm so proud of you guys for all that you guys have done. And then as far as inspiring before you expire, the thing that keeps popping into my head is leading by example. Be the change that you want in the world. Show that to everyone, even the ones, people who are hurting. And that's why for me, I'm definitely going to have a different perspective on everything, because forgiveness is at the forefront of my personality, so much so to where people look at me strange, like, this person did such and such and such, aren't you going to do anything about it? But I feel like the universe, just the world, karma gets back things, and I always receive so many good things, and I don't usually have to lift a finger even when someone does something horrific to me. So leading by example, and that's what I think about that.
That's it, folks.
No, hold on. I have to thank you, Larry, because you are creating this framework and this platform for us to be able to have these discussions. It's like, this is not possible without you, because I don't have to focus. Claire doesn't have to focus. Ashley doesn't have to focus on IT issues. We could just be here and focus on the content of our conversation. So we thank you, your organization, and the Trigger Warning Talk podcast, because you are making this possible. So thank you very much.
Hey, man, this is what family does. I feel like I'm an extension of the family now, myself, Mrs. LP, and I'm just honored that you all have graciously asked us to be the producer of this great series that we're going to be doing. And I'm telling you, like, I'm learning so much from you all. I take all these experiences and I say, how can this be applicable to my situation? How can I talk with my siblings? Do I address some of these things that we have problems with each other because we have this estrangement? There's a couple that I'm closer to more than some of the other ones. I don't want to have this continued lifelong estrangement from my siblings. I want us to be able to address things that we've never had conversations about. I want us to be able to have the difficult conversations. I want us to be able to have laughs. There's so much stuff that, like Claire was talking about, how she's proud of you, Albert, and all the things that you have accomplished and are accomplished. Same thing with you, Ashley. I want to be able to share those things with my siblings. And it's not just about being braggadocious, clout chasing, or anything like that. I want them to be part of these celebratory things that, if I earn a new certification, or if Albert and I are doing something on the radio together, it's like, hey, look at where we came from. Look what we went through, and now look at us now. It's a testament to the tenacity of the human spirit, because at the end of the day, we all know that the world as a whole isn't bad. There's just some bad things that happen. What do you do in those situations? How do you overcome these things? We know that when it comes to men, 70% of suicides that are committed are by men. So Albert and I go into rooms in Clubhouse that are specifically targeting men and men's mental health issues. We talk about journaling issues. So Ashley, you being a writer, I moderate a room in Clubhouse talking about journaling and how those things help you. And even in situations with family and siblings, these are the exercises that can be done and address certain topics. I'm just humbled to be part of the family. And I want to let the listeners know that you can catch these episodes. We don't do live streaming. These are recorded. I do want to say that I like the boundary conversation that we're having. I want that to always be in the forefront of everyone's mind as we wrap up this episode, which is a great intro. Boundaries are always important. It's always about respect, and it's always about love too. So we're never going to lose sight of those things. The love, the respect, and the laughter, even if there are tears that happen to come out. For Ashley, for Claire, for Albert, I'm LP. We want to thank you all for listening, and tune in on all major platforms of the Trigger Warning Talk podcast, as well as Spotify and YouTube, to be able to listen and watch the Trigger Warning Talk podcast present Sibling Bonds. At the end of every interview on the Trigger Warning Talk podcast, under our true crime banner, we cover a missing person case. These cases typically are melanated folks, because we want to bring the same energy and media attention to the plight of those that are missing. It could be a runaway, kidnapping, or an abduction. If they died or are missing under weird, unusual, strange, or mysterious, or possibly even criminal circumstances, we're going to cover those stories. I want to show you a story about a young man who was brought to my attention by the lovely Mrs. LP. WRIC.com and a Reddit forum called r/. r/missing persons. I want to play the news story, and I'll provide the links to both the video as well as the Reddit story in the show notes.
Live from State Police Head News reporter Autumn Childress. And Autumn, you've been in contact with this family since the very beginning of this case. What can you tell us about the latest tonight?
Well, Eric, Deanna, we first brought you this heartbreaking story 1 year ago. Tonight, Sion Carroll's family fears his case may have gone cold, but they tell me their fight for justice has not stopped.
And it hurts. Let's think about it if it was one of yours.
Tonight, pain and questions remain for Junius Carter 1 year after the gruesome murder of his grandson, Sion Carroll.
My family is still scrambling with his death.
On November 2nd of last year, the 17-year-old vanished. His family was left with only one clue about where he could be: his last pinged location. His cell phone picked up near a house in the town of Kinbridge, 60 miles away from his Henrico home. Family says they begged police to search the house, but that never happened. And it was 1 week after his disappearance when Sion's body was found. The medical examiner said he'd been shot, dismembered, covered in lye, then put into a shallow grave in Lunenburg County.
Unbelievable. It tore me up. How can you do that to a person?
That gruesome news sent shockwaves through this family and the community. They questioned who would have killed the 17-year-old and why. 1 year later, those same questions remain unanswered.
The town is so small. Somebody down there knows something. They know something. And just let us know. Let the family know.
Family now fearing Sion's case has gone cold. Earlier this year, the Kinbridge Police Department handed the case over to Virginia State Police. Investigators confirming tonight no one has been arrested.
We still haven't heard nothing.
No suspects?
No suspects.
1 year later, a billboard honoring the teen sits along Mechanicsville Turnpike. The message: "We miss you, Sion." Carter telling me tonight it's a constant reminder of the tragedy that struck his family. But he says their fight for justice continues.
We're not stopping until we get justice for him and some of the other kids that's missing or that have been murdered.
Now, family tells me they still go to Kinbridge, passing out flyers, trying to find answers. And of course, if you know anything about this, you are asked to report it. Live from State Police Headquarters tonight, I'm Autumn Childress.
This story also is posted on Reddit's r/missing persons forum, the subreddit for all things related to missing persons. Just a young kid who was missing at the age of 17. It's been over a year. This young man and his family, they need justice. We're going to continue to post these stories. We will post any story about any melanated person. 99% of the cases we do are melanated people. If you have a true crime story that you want us to share, or missing persons case that you want us to cover, send us an email, consultingsolutions@pentonpending.com. Thank you. As I always say, live in awareness, never live in fear. Keep your head on the swivel. Take a CPR, first aid, stop the bleed class. Learn how to be an immediate responder until someone like me, first responder, can show up, because it's not a matter of if, but when and where an emergency is going to happen. What are you going to do? We want you to learn how to survive in real times, physically, emotionally, and whatever else that can help you get back to your humanity. For the Trigger One to Talk podcast, LP out.